Have you heard that argument
Have you heard that?
about bare bones? I think Nate's made that argument with me before.
I think I've heard that kind of stuff, that things rot kind of quick out there, but you find all kinds of bones out, deer heads and things like that. I think the thing that factors in is, if this is true, and if like the aliens are true, why isn't there any physical evidence? And the thing I keep bumping up against is there are forces at work that don't want anybody to have the physical evidence. Supposedly at Roswell, there was, hundreds of yards of stuff laying around. And then you hear that they cordoned the whole place off, and they had, hundreds of privates out there picking up every little scrap of it. And then you hear stories about the men in black or whatever, just coming to people's houses and taking whatever they've got. And I don't think this thing could be believable if there wasn't an active element of suppression.
Yeah.
Because, I'd say the same thing. It's like, well, where's the evidence? Where's the videotape? Where's, a body or something like that? And I've heard stories about people that have shot them, but they've left them somewhere. There was a story about these two guys that were fishing. And it seems like Bigfoot's very territorial about fishing areas. And they're fishing, and this Bigfoot throws like a bowling ball size rock at them. And it really ticked off one of the guys. And they made a beeline for this guy, and they start throwing rocks and stuff at him.
At the Bigfoot.
Which they thought was a black man in a very furry coat or something.
Yeah.
There seemed to be a little bit of a racial angle to it. And so the Bigfoot starts throwing like log-sized trees at him. And actually, this is how the story goes. And actually, I think ran up on one of the guys and hit him on the side. And the guy had some busted ribs, and they went to the hospital. And all these authorities descend on him, natural resource people, state troopers, all this stuff. And they're trying to tell their story, and constantly, and you hear this all the time whenever you're confronting the authorities about Bigfoot, is they said, "You saw a bear." And this guy will go, "I know what I saw. It wasn't a bear. You saw a bear." "No, it wasn't. You saw a bear." It went back and forth. So the guy got treated at the hospital, so the story goes. And they got released, and the guy wouldn't shut up about it. And I don't know, some guys in suits or something just warned him, things are going to get bad for you if you don't shut up. And they had a business, and the phones were going crazy, and their credit was going crazy, and there was no record of them at the hospital. And it just sounds like if you get too vocal about it, something's going to start intervening. And that's what I've come across.
How do you think they know that story though? Like, is that just like one of those, like, that's like a legend story about?
Well, this is where I'm hooked in. I listen to these podcasts. God help us, podcasts.
Yes.
And
a million of them.
I figured, well, there's obviously no evidence, so I'm going to listen to everybody's story. If you're a detective and you have no physical evidence, you're going to get as many stories as you can, and as many views on things possible, and compare them and see if they hold water. And I've listened to hundreds and hundreds, like 300 of these. Like can I mention the name of the podcast? Yeah. One's called Sasquatch Chronicles.
Okay.
And I think there's another one out there. Well, I'll get to this other subject. Anyway, I like listening to somebody in their own voice who's an eyewitness, has gone through this stuff. And it's very convincing. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm about 300 people into this stuff. Teachers, policemen, ex-military guys, farmers, all telling these stories. And I'm going, if these guys are all lying, somebody hired 300 people gave them acting lessons
Yes.
to tell these really convincing stories.
Yeah.
And I'm going, well, what's the probabilities of that?
Yeah.
So that's how I keep, getting pulled into it.
I would agree. I mean, look, the one thing that I think to add into that with them being the made up stories is I agree. Most people don't know how to tell a story. And by almost everybody does not know how to tell a story that's compelling, that would get you to listen to it
To
over and over,
fabricate
to
one.
fabricate it.
Yeah.
So just in general, just if you think about you're talking about listening to these interviews where you're going, well, how are you going to listen to these people? It is that where you're now if a story's too perfect, that's when I would question something. But people don't know how to tell stories. So if they were just like, hey, I'm going to make this up and be super convincing, I think they would make too many mistakes in their story to then I would be questioning their story. So you can tell by just the way, if you listen to these stories and you hear someone describe it, and you can tell when you're like, this is coming from a real place. It's not someone, like you said, they would have to be actors, or they'd have had to work on the story, which I mean, they've probably told it a bunch of times to begin with. So they probably have gotten better at telling it. But I just don't think it's a long way to go. The ones that were, to fake Bigfoot, some of them, it's a very long way to go to be like, oh, it's just a joke. There's too many. So how many people are faking it? That's what I always think about Bigfoot is what you got 1,000 people a day trying to fake Bigfoot on people in these towns.
Yeah.
Is there money in that? Can they make money by just going, you know what? Let's go to this tiny Alaskan town and bang on tents.
Yeah.
And make these people like, it doesn't make sense.
I thought it was interesting. You said, there's a perception that the people who see Bigfoot or encounter aliens, they're all rednecks and hill people. And like you just said, a lot of these people are reputable members of society, doctors, ex-military, people that would have no incentive to lie about something like this because it would do nothing but kind of hurt their career or hurt relationships with people.
Right.
So,
They got nothing really to gain unless they're just attention freaks, which is what people say they are. But I don't get that impression at all. And you're kind of using your own judgment. Am I a good enough judge of character that I could tell when somebody's lying?
Yeah.
And okay, if I listen to 20 people, maybe they all were lying and they goofed on me. But you get to 100, you get to 200 people, and you go, my lie detector isn't that bad.
Yeah.
If 2 or 3 of these guys are telling the truth out of hundreds, it's real.
Yeah.
And
even if 99.9% were faking or just wrong, if 1.1%, then it's still the craziest thing ever.
The Bigfoot joke I had was I was saying I watched what was the Bigfoot show, Finding Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And like how this show was on and on for all these years. And it's like, what if they find him? Like, why would you people are like, why is this show on? You're like, I don't know. What if they find him?
Because it's a show. Hope they don't find him.
Huh?
Yeah. I kind of hope in a way they don't find him.
Yes, but I'm saying the idea for the show is to be like, either it's just fun to watch them talk about it, fun to watch them go visit these people, tell these stories. And your best case scenario is the world changes. If they find Bigfoot, the world is different, which I would have thought so, but maybe not.
Which we could talk about. Well, what would the impact? What's the motivation for the suppression, if there is this suppression?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just, it upsets the apple cart too much. It's like, okay, here's a fairly intelligent creature on another evolutionary track that's here. How does that
fit into the story of Earth?
Now, there is this thing called Gigantopithecus.
Yeah.
And there's like about 3 varieties of him. One's really big. He's like 10 foot tall, 500 plus pounds.
And this is another Bigfoot form.
This is back in history.
Okay.
And all they have on this thing are molars.
Yeah.
Some guy found these big molars in a Chinese herbalist store. Now, they had the smaller bones and smaller molars and stuff. But then this guy came across these big things and extrapolated, well, this thing's got to be gigantic.
Yeah.
But there were little ones, but maybe there's a couple of rib bones and a jawbone or something. But all they have on this really big one are these giant molars. So the prototype for this thing exists in the fossil record.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, we're talking about the Loch Ness Monster or something. This is something that we've got evidence has existed. And we keep finding new things, the little what do they call it? The Hobbit humanoid thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I think they call it the Hobbit.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Is it not the one in Mexico?
It's
right?
like an
Oh,
Indonesian.
Chupacabra?
Chupacabra.
Oh
No.
boy.
Yeah.
This was my
I
understanding.
like we just stumble in this. You're like, let me tell you about that. You have one of those in your pocket. You're like, I
That-
brought one of those in my.
That I've seen my daughter has adopted a dog that could pass for a chupacabra
chupacabra,
because it's
yeah.
so mangy and
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's in rough shape, but it's coming around.
What were you gonna say, Aaron?
Oh, my understanding is they found a humanoid species. They found a bunch of bones of they called them hobbits because that's the way they were shaped, but just that humans had just wiped out. So there is this other humanoid species, not totally unlike us, that they have records.
Well,
of.
there's an angle for you. If Bigfoot exists, he survived us.
Yeah.
And people wonder why it's so hard to find him and why he's so, wary and everything. Because all the other stuff, the Cro-Magnon guys and a lot of the Neanderthal guys aren't around anymore. And it's probably because we competed with them.
Do you think the Bigfoot ever just goes back in my day? Think he gives a lot of those speeches
To the young one?
Yeah, to
I
the
imagine
young-
there is a speech he gives to the young ones. Don't mess with those people.
When I was a kid, I thought there was just one Bigfoot, like Loch Ness Monster. Just it's Bigfoot,
Like there's
The
just
Bigfoot.
one,
just one.
literally one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought that, and I thought that until pretty recently, because you just think abominable snowman. I
Yeah.
just think that there's these
Oh, there's
singular,
one. Yeah.
Yeah, it
singular
should be
kind
big
of
feet.
monsters.
So
But-
is that like when you would listen and you thought the people on TV could hear you laugh? Is it the same? Is it around the same time?
That wasn't me, but yeah. But
Was that you?
That time about
no, that
like
was
comment.
it was a
Oh.
comment.
Oh,
I thought
man.
the people
Aaron
really,
thought people
I
died.
thought
It was
people
even
really
worse.
died.
in TV
Yes,
shows,
that's right, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If they're so smart, because that's kind of the argument, right? They don't
Right.
want to be found. And then I would see these videos online, which I was researching, and there's just occasional one just walking around and
Is it
just
because
out in the
is it
open.
because it was called Bigfoot? Is that what you just said? That you only thought it was one? Like you think it should have been Big Feet?
Yeah,
Big feet.
Like you should have been Big Feets?
Yeah.
That's what threw
Yeah.
you off the trail?
well, yeah.
You thought
one-
there was
Or-
honestly one Bigfoot.
when I was a kid, yeah.
Yeah.
Monofoot.
Monofoot.
I mean, I think that makes more sense
Yeah.
I don't
Why
think it
does that make no sense?
because it would be big feet if there's
He
multiple.
just thought it was
Yeah.
like the Loch Ness monster.
Yeah, there's one.
Yeah.
People don't think there's a
That's true.
species of Loch Ness monster.
Yeah.
There's just a singular
Yeah.
thing.
Because yeah.
I mean, it
Okay.
makes more sense to me. The idea that there's
Well, the Loch
an
Ness monster
apex
was in a
predator, a
lake.
species we don't know about.
Yes.
You two are the problem.
No.
Me and
The
Aaron
Loch-
are on board.
The Loch Ness monster, I think you only think it's one because it's in a lake. So you think it's this monster that's in this one lake.
Yeah.
Which seems crazy that they could never just find it if it was in there.
hmm
You know.
It's a big lake, though.
I know, but you could it's just
They had a whole regatta of yachts go up the whole loch,
Mhm.
and I think they saw something moving.
Something
down
recently, just there was a new picture.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
like a couple weeks ago, right?
there. Really?
To me,
Yeah.
that if there was something, they would find that because it is, even though it's a big, like you say, it's Lake Michigan. I guess if it's Lake Michigan, if it's that big of a lake, then it would be tough. But it's at least your area is targeted to be. If you really want an answer,
Yeah.
you could be like,
you know where to look.
you
for.
know where to look for.
They
it.
went down the whole thing. And they made a line, and they all had sonar on these yachts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
And they were spaced apart, and they went from one end to another. And I think the story goes that they saw some big shape move.
Mhm.
That could all be jive. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
substantiated or anything, but that would be the logical thing to do.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, there's a group in Arkansas, and I think it's called the North American Wood Ape Research thing or something, and they are putting time and effort into. There's an area in the Ozarks they believe is a hot spot.
Yeah.
They've had their little sightings and stuff. So they got this valley where there's this choke point where they know all the game goes through, and they figure they do too. So they're stringing a whole string of these trail cams.
Yeah.
They haven't done it all yet. This is still going on. I don't think they're going to find anything because I think these things have scouts And I think they know every time you come into their area, they know that you're putting these things on the trees.
They're figuring it out.